December 4th, 1872. The Atlantic Ocean, approximately 400 miles east of the Azores Islands. Captain David Morehouse of the brigantine Dei Gratia spots a ship on the horizon. She's drifting erratically, her sails partially set, moving with the wind but with no clear direction. As the Dei Gratia draws closer, Morehouse realises something is wrong. The ship is the Mary Celeste, a merchant vessel he recognises. Her captain, Benjamin Briggs, is a friend of Morehouse's. They'd had dinner together just weeks earlier in New York before both ships departed for Europe. Morehouse signals the Mary Celeste. No response. He orders his crew to hail the ship. Silence. He sends a boarding party, 3 men in a small boat. They climb aboard, and what they find becomes one of the most enduring mysteries in maritime history. The ship is deserted, completely abandoned. But nothing is out of place. The cargo, 1,701 barrels of commercial alcohol, is intact and properly secured. The ship's supplies, food, water, clothing, are all accounted for. In the captain's cabin, a sewing machine sits on the table. A child's toys are scattered on the floor. In the galley, breakfast dishes are laid out, some still containing traces of food. The ship's log sits open on the navigation desk. The last entry is dated November 25th, 1872, 9 days earlier. It simply records the ship's position and weather conditions. Nothing unusual, no distress, no emergency. But Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and the 7-man crew, 10 people in total, are gone, vanished. The ship's only lifeboat is missing, but there's no storm damage, no signs of violence, no blood. No indication of why 10 people would abandon a perfectly seaworthy vessel in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, leaving behind all their possessions, their food, and a fortune in cargo. For over 150 years, investigators, historians, and maritime experts have tried to solve the mystery of the Mary Celeste. Dozens of theories have been proposed, from piracy to mutiny, from sea monsters to insurance fraud, from rogue waves to toxic fumes. But every theory has a fatal flaw, a piece of evidence that doesn't fit, a question that can't be answered. This is the Mary Celeste, the ghost ship that haunts maritime history, the vessel that asks, how do 10 people vanish from a ship in the middle of the ocean, and why would they leave behind everything they needed to survive? Welcome to 404, Mystery Found, where we investigate history's greatest unanswered questions. So settle in. What you are about to hear is not a campfire story. These are documented forensic mysteries where every clue leads to a dead end, and every answer only raises a darker question. Act 1. The Ship, the Captain, and the Voyage. The Mary Celeste was built in 1861 in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, Canada. She was originally christened Amazon, but her early history was cursed by tragedy. On her maiden voyage, her captain died of pneumonia. On her second voyage, she collided with another ship and was severely damaged. On her third voyage, she ran aground in Canada. She was later sold, rebuilt, and renamed Mary Celeste in 1868. By 1872, she was owned by a consortium of investors, including her captain Benjamin Briggs. Captain Briggs was 37 years old, a respected and experienced sailor from a seafaring family. His father was a ship captain. His 3 brothers were ship captains. Benjamin himself had been sailing since he was a teenager and had commanded multiple vessels without incident. He was also deeply religious, a devout Christian, a member of the Congregational Church, known for running a dry ship. meaning no alcohol was permitted aboard for the crew. He was described by those who knew him as careful, competent, and conscientious. He was not a reckless man, he was not prone to panic, and he certainly wasn't the type to abandon his ship without cause. In early November 1872, Briggs was in New York, preparing the Mary Celeste for a transatlantic voyage. The ship had been chartered to transport 701 barrels of denatured alcohol, industrial alcohol used for fortifying wine, from New York to Genoa, Italy. The cargo was valuable, worth approximately $35,000 in 1872 dollars, equivalent to about $800,000 today. The voyage was expected to take 30 days under normal conditions. Briggs made an unusual decision for this voyage. He brought his family with him. His wife Sarah Elizabeth Briggs, age 30, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia Matilda. The couple's 7-year-old son Arthur was left behind with Sarah's mother. He was attending school and couldn't miss classes. Sarah kept a letter she'd written to her mother-in-law just before departure. In it, she wrote, "We seem to have a very good mate and steward, and I hope I shall have a pleasant time. Arthur thinks we shall have bad luck, but I tell him that is all nonsense." End of quote. The crew consisted of 7 men: Albert Richardson, first mate; Andrew Gilling, second mate; Edward William Head, steward and cook; Volker Lorenzen, able seaman; Arian Martins, able seaman; Lorenzen, able seaman; Gottlieb Goodshall, able seaman. All were experienced sailors. None had criminal records. None had previous conflicts with Captain Briggs. It was, by all accounts, a competent and reliable crew. On November 5th, 1872, the Mary Celeste was loaded and ready to depart. But a severe storm delayed the voyage. For 2 days, Briggs waited for the weather to clear. Finally, on November 7th, 1872, at 3 p.m, the Mary Celeste set sail from New York Harbour, bound for Genoa. 8 days later, on November 15th, another ship departed from New York on a similar route. The Dei Gratia, captained by David Morehouse, a fellow Nova Scotian and friend of Captain Briggs. For the next 3 weeks, both ships sailed eastward across the Atlantic. The Mary Celeste was faster, maintaining a lead of several days. The ships did not encounter each other during the voyage. On November 25th, 1872, 9 days after departure, Captain Briggs made the final entry in the Mary Celeste's log. The ship was approximately 600 miles west of Portugal, making good progress. And then, nothing. 9 days later, on December 4th, 1872, Captain Morehouse spotted the Mary Celeste drifting near the Azores, roughly 400 miles from where Briggs had last recorded their position. Something had happened in those 9 days, something that made 10 people abandon ship. Act 2. The Discovery. A perfect mystery. When Captain Morehouse first spotted the Mary Celeste, his immediate instinct was that something was wrong. The ship's sails were in disarray, some furled, some set, but configured in a way no competent crew would leave them. She was moving, but erratically, like a ship with no one at the helm. Morehouse sent his chief mate, Oliver DeVoe, along with 2 crew members, John Wright and John Johnson, to board the vessel and investigate. DeVoe later testified about what they found. His account, given under oath at the salvage hearing in Gibraltar, provides the most detailed record of the ship's condition. Let me take you through it, room by room, exactly as DeVoe described. The deck. The deck was wet but otherwise unremarkable. The ship's wheel was functioning. The compass in the binnacle, the housing that protects the compass, was destroyed. The glass was broken, and the compass itself was damaged. But there was a spare compass in the captain's cabin, so this wouldn't have prevented navigation. The ship's bell was in place. The rigging was intact, though some of the sails were torn, consistent with being exposed to wind and weather without adjustment for over a week. Most significantly, the ship's only lifeboat, a small yawl, was missing. The davits, the cranes that hold the lifeboat, were still in place, but the boat itself was gone. The cargo hold. Deveau descended into the hold and examined the cargo. All 1,701 barrels of alcohol were present and properly secured. However, 9 of the barrels had been opened. The contents appeared to be intact. There was no evidence of theft or consumption. Why 9 barrels were opened remains unexplained. The hold contained about 3.5 feet of water, more than normal, but not enough to sink the ship, or even cause serious concern. Ships of that era commonly took on water during Atlantic crossings. The pumps were functional and could have easily removed the water. The crew quarters. The crew's bunks were neat. Personal belongings, clothing, pipes, boots, were stowed properly. Seamen's chests were undisturbed. There were no signs of a hurried departure or a struggle. The galley. This is where things became eerie. The galley stove was knocked slightly out of place, but otherwise functional. Cooking utensils were hanging on their hooks. Dishes were laid out, some with remnants of food. A bottle of cough medicine sat on a shelf, half empty. Everything suggested a meal had been recently prepared or consumed. The captain's cabin. Deveau entered Captain Briggs's cabin. A sewing machine sat on a table. Children's toys, including a small rocking horse, were on the floor. The captain's bed was unmade. His clothing was neatly stored in drawers. His navigational instruments, sextant, chronometer, were present. But his personal logbook and the ship's navigation book were missing. The last entry in the official ship's log, which was found on the navigation desk, was dated November 25, 1872 at 8 a.m. It recorded the ship's position as 37 degrees 01 north, 25 degrees 01 west, approximately 600 miles west of Portugal. The entry noted that the island of Santa Maria in the Azores was visible to the north. But here's something crucial. When the Mary Celeste was found on December 4th, she was approximately 400 miles east of that position, near the island of São Miguel in the Azores. This means the ship had continued sailing, unmanned, for 9 days and 400 miles. The ship's papers. The official ship's log was present as mentioned, but Captain Briggs's personal log and the ship's navigation slate, a chalkboard used for quick navigational calculations, were missing. Why would someone take those items but leave behind the official log, the cargo manifest, and all valuable navigational instruments? The bilge pump. This detail would become crucial to later theories. Deveau testified that when he checked the bilge pump, he found a sounding rod lying on the deck. A sounding rod is a tool used to measure water depth in the hold. Someone had recently checked the water level and then left the rod on deck instead of stowing it properly. This suggested urgency. Someone had checked the water level and then, panicked? Made a hasty decision. The sword. In the crew quarters, Deveau found a sword with what appeared to be bloodstains on the blade. This discovery would spark wild speculation about mutiny and murder. However, later forensic testing revealed the bloodstains were actually rust mixed with red pigment, likely from cargo residue. The alcohol barrels. Remember those 9 open barrels? When examined more closely, they appeared to have been opened with a sharp implement, deliberately, not accidentally. But none of the alcohol was missing. The barrels were opened, inspected, and left unsealed. The overall impression. Oliver Devoe's summary statement to the salvage court was telling. "I found the ship in a thoroughly seaworthy condition, with ample provisions for all on board for 6 months. There was no damage to the hull, no leaks of consequence, and no apparent reason for the vessel to have been abandoned. The pumps were in working order. Everything was in its place, but the people were gone." End of quote. Captain Morehouse faced a decision. Under maritime law, an abandoned ship could be claimed for salvage, meaning whoever brought it to port could claim a substantial reward. But boarding and claiming a derelict ship was risky business, both legally and practically. Morehouse decided to split his crew. He, along with most of his men, would continue on the Dei Gratia. Oliver Devoe, along with 2 volunteers, Augustus Anderson and Charles Lund, would sail the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar, the nearest major port. For 8 days, the 2 ships sailed together across the Atlantic. On December 12th, they arrived in Gibraltar. Morehouse immediately reported the situation to British authorities, and that's when the mystery became an international sensation. Act 3, the investigation, and the theories begin. The moment the Mary Celeste arrived in Gibraltar, it became a legal and investigative puzzle. Frederick Solly Flood, the Attorney General of Gibraltar, and the Queen's Proctor for the Vice Admiralty Court took control of the case. His job was to determine whether the ship had been lawfully abandoned, making it eligible for salvage, or whether something criminal had occurred. Solly Flood was suspicious from the start. He was convinced that Captain Morehouse and his crew were somehow involved in the disappearance. His theory: Morehouse and Briggs had conspired to stage an abandonment so they could split the salvage reward. To prove this, Solly Flood ordered a forensic examination of the ship. He brought in surveyors, doctors, and maritime experts. They spent weeks examining every inch of the Mary Celeste. The forensic findings. 1. The bloodstains. As mentioned, what appeared to be blood on the sword was actually rust and cargo residue, but Solly Flood also claimed to have found bloodstains on the deck railing and in the captain's cabin. Dr. J. Patron, a local physician, examined the stains using the best forensic techniques available in 1872. His conclusion: the stains were not blood. They were rust, paint, and food residue. 2. The hull damage. Solly Flood claimed they were deep cuts on the bow of the ship, evidence, he said, of an attack or deliberate sabotage. Marine surveyors examined the marks. Their conclusion: they were normal scrapes and gouges consistent with a ship that had been at sea for years. Ships regularly collide with docks, debris, and ice. The marks were superficial and posed no threat to seaworthiness. 3. The missing lifeboat. The davits, the wooden arms that hold a ship's boat, showed clear evidence that the lifeboat had been launched properly, not cut loose in a panic. The ropes were still attached to the davits, suggesting the boat had been lowered deliberately. 4. The alcohol cargo. All 1,701 barrels were accounted for. The 9 open barrels showed no evidence of consumption. If the crew had been drinking, there would be empty bottles, spilled alcohol, or signs of intoxication in their quarters. There were none. After 3 months of investigation, Solly Flood could not prove foul play. He reluctantly concluded there was insufficient evidence to charge anyone with a crime. On March 14, 1873, the Vice Admiralty Court ruled that the Mary Celeste had been lawfully abandoned and awarded Captain Morehouse and his crew a salvage payment of 700, about 1/5 of the ship's total value. It was a modest sum, far less than they'd hoped for, and it contradicted Solly Flood's theory of a staged salvage scheme. But the ruling didn't answer the central question: why did Captain Briggs abandon ship? The theories, from rational to ridiculous. In the 150 plus years since the Mary Celeste was found, dozens of theories have been proposed. Some are plausible, some are absurd. Let's examine them, starting with the most rational. Theory number 1, the alcohol explosion theory, which was most widely accepted. This theory, proposed by modern maritime historians and chemists, suggests that the ship's cargo of denatured alcohol created a dangerous situation. The science, denatured alcohol, especially in wooden barrels, can release flammable vapours, particularly in the heat. In November 1872, the Mary Celeste passed through an area known for unseasonably warm weather. If several barrels began leaking simultaneously, the vapours could have accumulated in the hold. These vapours are invisible but highly flammable. If a crew member opened the hold and struck a match or lantern, there could have been a flash explosion, a burst of flame without destructive force but loud and terrifying. And the scenario: Captain Briggs, seeing smoke or smelling fumes, orders the hatches opened. Vapour rushes out, perhaps a small flash occurs. Briggs, fearing a catastrophic explosion, orders everyone into the lifeboat as a precaution. They attach a long rope to the ship and lower the lifeboat, planning to wait at a safe distance until they're sure the danger has passed. But then the rope breaks, or the knot slips. The Mary Celeste, still under partial sail, continues moving. The lifeboat with 10 people and no supplies is left behind in the Atlantic. Evidence supporting this theory. 9 barrels were opened, possibly by the crew investigating the fumes. The ship's hatches were open when found. The lifeboat was deliberately launched, not abandoned in panic. No explosion actually occurred, no fire damage, explaining why the ship remained intact. Alcohol vapours can create a frightening whoosh of flame without causing structural damage. Problems with this theory. The weather on November 25th was calm according to the log, not ideal conditions for vapour build-up. Captain Briggs was an experienced sailor. Would he really abandon ship over fumes without a confirmed fire? The crew would have noticed if the rope was breaking. Why didn't they grab essential supplies first? Theory number 2. The waterspout or seaquake theory. This theory suggests that a sudden, violent natural event caused a brief but terrifying situation. A waterspout is essentially a tornado over water. They can appear suddenly and disappear just as quickly. If a waterspout struck the Mary Celeste, it could have created chaos on deck, damaged equipment, and convinced the crew they were sinking. A seaquake is an underwater earthquake. Seaquakes can create sudden, violent shaking that feels like the ship is breaking apart, even though no actual damage occurs. The scenario: a waterspout or seaquake strikes. The ship shakes violently. Water rushes onto the deck. The compass is damaged. Captain Briggs, fearing the ship is breaking apart or sinking, orders an immediate evacuation. They launch the lifeboat. But once the event passes, they realise the ship is fine. They try to row back, but the wind and current carry the Mary Celeste away faster than they can row. Evidence supporting this theory. The broken compass suggests sudden impact. The sounding rod on deck suggests someone was frantically checking for hull damage. The Azores region is seismically active. Explains why the ship appeared undamaged but the crew fled. Problems with this theory. No waterspouts or earthquakes were recorded in that area on November 25th. The last log entry describes calm conditions. An experienced captain like Briggs would have checked for actual damage before abandoning ship. Theory number 3. The mutiny theory. This was Frederick Solly-Flood's preferred theory during the investigation. The scenario: the crew, predominantly German sailors, mutinies against Captain Briggs. They kill Briggs, his wife and daughter, along with the loyal first mate. They then escape in the lifeboat, perhaps planning to claim they were the sole survivors of an accident. Evidence supporting this theory: the blood on the sword, later disproven; the missing lifeboat, solely floods suspicion of the crew. Problems with this theory: no evidence of violence anywhere on the ship. No bodies were ever found. The crew had no motive. They were well paid and well treated. If they mutinied, why not take the cargo or valuable items? Captain Briggs was known for running a fair, disciplined ship. Theory number 4. The piracy theory. Pirates attacked the ship, killed or kidnapped the crew, and fled when they realised the cargo was industrial alcohol, worthless to pirates, rather than drinking alcohol or valuable goods. Problems with this theory: no signs of forced entry or struggle. Pirates would have stolen the valuables in the captain's cabin. The cargo was intact. Pirates would have taken the ship itself, not abandoned it. Theory number 5. The insurance fraud theory. Captain Briggs and Captain Morehouse conspired to stage an abandonment and split the salvage reward. Problems with this theory: Briggs brought his wife and 2-year-old daughter. Would he fake their deaths for insurance money? The salvage reward was only mean $1,700, hardly worth such an elaborate scheme. Briggs was a part owner of the ship. He'd lose more than he'd gain. Morehouse and Briggs were friends, but not close enough to risk their reputations and lives. Theory number 6. The rogue wave theory. A massive wave swept everyone off the deck while they were working. Problems with this theory: 10 people were aboard, including a woman and child who would have been in the cabin. The deck hatches were secured. No evidence of a wave impact. The paranormal theories. Over the years, more fantastical explanations emerged. Sea monsters attacked and devoured the crew. A UFO abducted everyone. The ship passed through the Bermuda Triangle. It didn't. Wrong ocean region. Atlantean technology or underwater civilizations. A time warp transported the crew to another dimension. None of these have any supporting evidence. Act 4. The aftermath and the legend. After the salvage hearing, the Mary Celeste was returned to her owners and put back into service. But she was now cursed by her reputation. Sailors refused to crew her. Captains considered her bad luck. She changed hands multiple times over the next decade, each owner losing money. In November 1884, 12 years after the mysterious abandonment, the Mary Celeste met her end. Her final captain, Gilman Parker, deliberately ran her aground on a reef off Haiti as part of an insurance fraud scheme. He had overinsured the cargo and planned to collect the payout, but investigators discovered the fraud. Parker was charged with barratry, deliberately destroying a ship. He died before the trial concluded. His partners were acquitted due to lack of evidence, but their reputations were destroyed. The Mary Celeste was left to rot on the reef. By 1885, she had disintegrated completely. But the mystery of what happened in November 1872 lived on. The family's fate. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their daughter Sophia, and the 7 crew members were never found. No bodies, no wreckage from the lifeboat, no trace. In 1873, Benjamin's mother, Sophia Briggs, wrote in her diary, "I cannot believe my son is gone. He was too careful, too experienced. Something terrible must have happened, but what? I shall never know." End of quote. Benjamin and Sarah's surviving son, Arthur, was raised by relatives. He later became a lawyer and spent years researching his father's disappearance. He never found answers. The literary legend. In 1884, a young British writer named Arthur Conan Doyle, years before he created Sherlock Holmes, published a short story called J. Habakkuk Jeffson's Statement. It was a fictionalized account of the Mary Celeste, featuring a revenge plot, murder, and racial conspiracy. The story was presented as if it were non-fiction. Many readers believed it was the true explanation. The story became so influential that for decades people confused Doyle's fiction with the actual facts of the case. This began a tradition of Mary Celeste fiction. The ship appeared in dozens of novels, films, and TV shows, almost always with wildly inaccurate details. Modern investigations. In 2002, a team of scientists and maritime historians, led by Dr. Andrea Sella from University College London, conducted a detailed analysis using modern chemistry and engineering. They built a scale model of the Mary Celeste's cargo hold and replicated the conditions of November 1872. They concluded that an alcohol vapour explosion without flame or destruction was not only possible but likely under the right conditions. Their simulation showed that if just a few barrels leaked simultaneously, the pressure and fumes could create a loud, terrifying bang that would convince anyone below deck that the ship was exploding. Dr. Sella's conclusion: Captain Briggs made a rational decision based on incomplete information. He evacuated his family and crew to save their lives from what he believed was an imminent explosion. By the time they realised the ship wasn't actually in danger, it was too late. The mystery that endures. The Mary Celeste is unique among maritime mysteries. It's not a case of a ship sinking in a storm or vanishing without a trace. The ship survived. The cargo survived. Everything survived, except the people. And that's what makes it so haunting. We have the ship, frozen in time like a snapshot of the moment before disaster. We can walk through the rooms, examine the objects, read the log entries. We know exactly where they were and what they were doing, right up until they disappeared. But we don't know why. Was it a rational decision made under pressure that went tragically wrong? Was it a natural phenomenon that terrified experienced sailors into a fatal mistake? Or was it something else, something we haven't considered? In 2001, best-selling author and maritime historian Clive Cussler claimed his team had located the wreck of the Mary Celeste's lifeboat off the coast of Haiti. But the findings were never confirmed, and Cussler later admitted the evidence was inconclusive. To this day, no physical trace of the 10 missing people has ever been found. The Mary Celeste remains what she's always been: a perfect mystery. A ship that should have provided all the answers, but instead became the question itself. Somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, 150 years ago, 10 people climbed into a small boat and rowed away from safety. They had no food, no water, no chance of reaching land. They must have known they were going to die, but they did it anyway. Why? You've been listening to 404 Mystery Found. Subscribe so you don't miss our next case. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.